What's up, everybody? I'm Guy, and today we're going to talk about the 10. No, actually, I couldn't come up with just 10. It's actually the 25 best comic book covers of all time. Now, before we jump into the video, don't forget that every month here, I do a giveaway. And this month, the giveaway is for this comic book. It's Amazing Spider-Man number 328, the iconic Spidey cover with the Incredible Hulk getting the old uppercut as portrayed by my probably favorite artist of all time, Todd McFarlane. Now, in order to be eligible for this giveaway, it's pretty simple. First and foremost, be subscribed to this channel. And again, at the end of the month, I'll pick one of you guys to win this book. The second thing is to have notifications turned on. Click that little bell icon, because what I will do is a giveaway announcement video at the end of the month, and you need to see that video in order to actually claim the prize if you win. So don't forget to have notifications turned on. Click on every video and find out if you get this book, and stay tuned for more really cool giveaways in the coming months. So yeah, I was preparing my list for the greatest comic book covers of all times when I was, doing my notes for this video. And initially I was like, I'm just going to do 10 covers. It'll be a cool, top 10 list. And I got to number 10 and I was like, well, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? Suddenly I got to 20 and I was like, but yeah, there's also this one. And then there's this one. I finally just said enough is enough at 25. So this is my top 25 comic book covers of all times. And there's a few caveats here. I tried to avoid putting the same artist on the list more than once. I mean, I could pick a dozen greatest covers by Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee or, I don't know, Neil Adams or, Jack Kirby. Like, the list goes on, right? I didn't want 5 of Todd McFarlane's covers. So you'll only see each artist one time on this list. I also tried to avoid putting the same comic book title on the list more than once. So I didn't want a bunch of Amazing Spider-Man covers on this list. I thought that would get monotonous. There's a few exceptions to this list, and I'll explain them when I get to them. But yeah, for the most part, I'm trying to pick different comic books for each one of these. So there's going to be, covers where you're going to be like, well, what about XYZ cover? It's not on the list. It's probably because I already picked that artist for my favorite, or I already picked that title for my favorite. So that would explain why there's certainly going to be a lot of omissions from this list. But I tried to do my best to pick what I thought were the absolute best covers of all time. Now, let's jump into it with number 25. All right, so my first cover on the list is going to be Superman number 75 by Dan Jurgens. It is, of course, the death of Superman icon with that really iconic imagery of the cape, almost like a red flag waving in the wind. And yeah, it is one of my favorite covers of all time for sure. If you were there in the early 90s when this book came out, yeah, it was a little bit oversaturated. It was certainly overhyped. And that was before the internet was a thing. It was just, even in our local, comic group circles, like, it was a big deal when this book came out. So I think I had to put this one on the list as one of the most iconic, at least, if not one of the best covers of all time. Technically, it's not like a masterpiece of artwork, but it really captured the essence of what was going on at that time in comic books, and there's just something special about this book for me. Number 24 is kind of a tough one for me because, again, I don't think this is the most technically accomplished piece of artwork, but there's just something special not only about this cover, but also this story, and that is the cover of Watchmen number 1. Watchmen, as written by Alan Moore, is one of the greatest stories of all time. And whenever I see that cover, it brings me back to that time when I've read that book for the first time. And of course, I've reread it several times since then. So yeah, the Gibbons cover for Watchmen number 1, at least for me, it has to be on at least a top 25 list because it is another cover that is an absolute icon, and it's just so meaningful. At 23, I might be putting this book a little bit too low. This is probably, I think it should maybe be a top 20, but I have so many good things on this list above this that it was just difficult for me to decide. And yeah, that's the Incredible Hulk number 181. Of course, an iconic book because it's the first appearance of Wolverine, but an iconic cover as well. And it's a beautiful cover. Here's the funny thing about this cover. This happens to me all the time, and I bet it happens to a lot of you guys all the time. You're thumbing through comic books, and you're like in the Incredible Hulk section of a long box, and all of a sudden you see that iconic red cover at the top, third to half of a comic book. And you're like, oh my God, is that Hulk 181? As soon as you see that color red on a comic book that says the Incredible Hulk on it, the first thing you think of is, holy smokes, that might be Hulk 181. Of course, it never is, because that color of red was used on a lot of comic book covers, but that's how iconic that cover is. You've seen it so many times, and you've thought about it so many times, that just the color red that they used in the background of that comic is iconic in its own right. So yeah, this is an amazing cover. Herb Trimpe did a phenomenal job on the artwork and the layout and the presentation of this cover, and it's got to be in the top 25 at a minimum. And yeah, it probably should be in the top 20 at least. Number 22 is Marvel Spotlight number 5. First appearance of Ghost Rider by Mike Plug or Plog. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. And the funny thing is that the imagery of Marvel Spotlight number 5 and Ghost Rider number 1, which are very similar looking covers, that imagery has stuck with me since probably I was 10 years old. I think it's the first time I ever saw that book. It was a wall book, even back in the late 1980s in comic book stores. And it's just stuck with me ever since. It's a beautiful cover. And the ironic thing is Mike Plug or Mike Plog, however you pronounce his name, I'm sorry, I've never heard his name before. That's the funny thing. I didn't even know who did that cover. But it's one of the greatest covers of all time. It's one of my favorites. And it's probably the first thing that really turned me on to the idea of pursuing and collecting and reading Ghost Rider books. And yeah, it is amazing. Number 21, The Web of Spider-Man, number 1 by Charles Vess. Holy cow. What an incredibly moving cover this is. You got the Spider-Man black costume, all of the smoke, the gargoyles, everything that's going on this cover. It's really atmospheric and it's kind of moving. When I remember seeing that cover, another one that I saw for the first time in the late 80s or early 90s when I was collecting as a kid, and it's just stuck with me forever. It's very beautiful, and yeah, it is for sure deserving of being in the top 20 of some of the best comic book covers of all time, without a doubt. So number 20 for me is going to be probably a little bit of a controversial pick, but hear me out. I picked Amazing Spider-Man number 601. This is a J. Scott Campbell cover, and it's probably one of his most iconic covers. It's, of course, of Mary Jane sitting on the couch, looking great, as always, and Spider-Man going out the window. And yeah, I know some people think that this is like just an unrealistic depiction of a woman, and maybe it's sexist or misogynistic or whatever. But I don't know. For me, I love J. Scott Campbell's artwork. I love Mary Jane covers, and I think that this is the best one of both of those categories. And yeah, it belongs in my top 20 for sure, no questions asked. Number 19 is going to be Batman the Killing Joke, and it's the cover artwork by Brian Boland. An amazing book in its own right, again, as written by Alan Moore, who's just a phenomenal comic book writer. And Brian Boland's depiction of the Joker, for me, is the de facto standard picture or imagery that I think of when I think of the Joker. I think that his design of Joker should basically be the design that is constantly used, because I absolutely love it. So it's not so much that it's just the cover of this book, it's that it's also, I think, the most iconic design of the Joker of all time. It's certainly my favorite. And yeah, I'm putting it on my top 20 for sure. Number 18, and here's the first time I break my rule about putting the same book in the list, because we already had an Incredible Hulk book. But this is the Incredible Hulk's King Size Special number 1 by Steranko. And I know a lot of people are going to say, but the best Steranko book, or cover anyway, is the Nick Fury with the black swirlies and everything. And like, yeah, that's a great iconic cover. But I like this Incredible Hulk's King Size Special cover a lot more. And if I was going to pick one Steranko book or cover or piece of artwork, this one for me is the standard that I compare all the other ones to. Even though, like that Nick Fury book, there are a lot of other great ones. I suspect that a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me on this one being the best Steranko example of cover art, but it's my favorite. And yeah, I'm going to cheat on this list and put the Incredible Hulk on it again because it's such a good piece of artwork. Number 17. This was a tough one because it's a Barry Windsor Smith piece of artwork. And I wanted to pick one of his Weapon X Marvel Comics Presents covers because those are some of the first comics that I ever bought as a collector. But I think my favorite piece of artwork by him is the Conan the Barbarian #1, which unfortunately is a book I've never owned. It's actually a book I've never read, but it's a cover I have seen 1,000 times probably, and it is amazing. It was hard for me to decide on which Barry Windsor Smith book to put on this list because he's done so much great stuff, and the Marvel Comics Presents Weapon X stuff really does mean a lot to me. I do own that run of comic books. But when I really sat here and thought about it for a while, I said, you know what? I got to put Conan the Barbarian #1 on the list because I think that might be even more iconic. Number 16, Alex Ross, right? He's an amazing, amazing artist, one of the best of all times. And this Batman Harley Quinn cover depicting the Joker and Harley Quinn dancing, I mean, this is like fine art. This is like an oil painting that should be in a museum. It is such a good piece of artwork. Now, Alex Ross does all sorts of amazing covers and artwork, and we've seen just, I don't know, dozens, if not hundreds of different images by him. He's exceptionally talented. But this one in particular, this one takes the cake for me. And yeah, I really had to put it on my list. So at number 15, I am putting a John Byrne cover. And picking a John Byrne cover was exceptionally hard, to say the least. He's done so many good ones, different depictions of X-Men and Wolverine in particular. But for me, I decided to go with Spectacular Spider-Man #101. The starkness of just like the solid black versus white on this cover, but it's still so incredibly readable, it's a work of art. It's amazing how well you can look at that cover without any gray tones or any color. It's just black and white. But you can immediately see this is Spider-Man swinging through the city amongst skyscrapers. It is, again, it's just so incredibly readable, even with such a limited palette, that I think it deserves to be on one of the best cover of all times lists. And yeah, I'm putting it here at, what did I say? Number 15. Number 14, George Perez, Crisis on Infinite Earths, #7. We got one of the most iconic depictions of Superman of all time, in anguish, holding Supergirl. It's an amazing cover. And weirdly, I've never read this series. I'm actually more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, with the exception of Batman. I've read a lot of Batman. But yeah, I've never read much Superman. I've never read this particular series. But again, it's one of those covers that's just like ingrained into your mental psyche. You've seen it so many times. It's an icon, and it deserves to be on this list. The ironic thing about it, though, aside from the fact that I've never read this story arc, and I probably should put that on my list of things to read, is that also I'm not like the biggest George Perez fan. I know he's an amazing artist. I know he has a lot of fans, but yeah, I don't know. I think maybe because he's done so much DC artwork and less Marvel artwork, I just haven't been exposed to it as much. But every time I see this cover, I think, wow, that's amazing. George knocked it out of the park here. This cover might deserve to be in the top 10, but I have a bunch of other ones above it that just eked it out a little bit for me. And you'll see why in a minute. All right, so number 13 is a little bit of a sentimental favorite for me. It's Giant Size X-Men #1 by Gil Kane. I know it's not technically the most advanced piece of artwork, but it's such a good design. It's such a good layout. You've got the page tearing open with all of the new X-Men members bursting through, and you've got the old members in the background. I do think it's a beautiful design, if not like, the most technically advanced piece of artwork. It's not Alex Ross, but I mean, a phenomenal cover. And again, it's a book that's a sentimental favorite to me. I've owned this book 3 times in the past, and unfortunately I don't own it right now, but I'd like to rectify that at some point in the future. Yeah, I absolutely do love Giant Size X-Men #1. I think it's one of the greatest. Now, why is it such a sentimental favorite to me? I think it sits on that like trifecta. It's a cornerstone of like the 3 best books from the Bronze Age. You have Giant Size X-Men #1, Amazing Spider-Man 125, and Incredible Hulk 181. For me, that's like the 3 blue chip stocks in comic book collecting Bronze Age era books that you just have to have. And yeah, it is absolutely a sentimental favorite, but I'm putting it on my list and I'm putting it high up at number 13. For me, number 12 is going to be Silver Surfer number 4 by John Buscema. It is, of course, that dynamic pose of Thor with the hammer and Silver Surfer coming down at him. That gorgeous background with the rainbow pattern and all of the space. I mean, it's like one of the best covers of all time. It probably should be up in the top 10. It's amazing. It is. And it was an easy cover for me to pick to be in my top 25. And yeah, I think maybe it should be a little bit higher. A lot of these rankings could easily change from day to day. If you asked me in a week or in a month, like, oh, where does this one rank? Where does this one rank? I might swap stuff around. And I suspect that Silver Surfer number 4 could climb up in my rankings if I sat here and really thought about it for a while. It is another book that I unfortunately don't have in my collection yet, but maybe someday, because I'd love to be able to pull it out and look at it from time to time. It is an absolute beauty. Uncanny X-Men 101, number 11 by Dan Crespi. That's another funny one where, like, I didn't know who drew this cover. When I was doing my list, I immediately think of Jean Grey and the Phoenix coming up out of the water. Iconic, amazing cover, great storyline. Chris Claremont wrote all of those Uncanny X-Men's, including the Phoenix Saga stuff. Amazing stories, but didn't know that Dan Crespi was the person that drew this. I would have always guessed that it was John Byrne for some reason. I don't know why. It's just always what I assumed. But when I was putting together my list, I was like, maybe I better double check and see who the artist was on this. And yeah, to my surprise, it wasn't who I thought. And in fact, it was somebody I'd actually never heard of before. Now, a lot of you guys are going to be like, what do you mean you never heard of this artist? What's wrong with you? I'm more into the characters and the stories and all of that stuff than I am focusing too much on who created them. It's never been one of my major hangups. So, forgive me, I don't memorize every artist and creator and writer and stuff. But as far as, covers go, this one has been just burned in my mind ever since I saw it when I was just a little kid. And yeah, it is for sure one of the best. Just squeaks outside of the top 10. But at number 11, I think it is a very worthy pick. So now we are into the top 10. And this is probably going to be another controversial pick, I'm guessing. I'm going to go with Cry for Dawn, number 1 by Joseph Michael Linsner. And the reason why is because as I was in my first phase of comic book collecting, and I've collected comic books now 3 times over the course of my life. I started in the late 80s and kind of got out of it in the late 90s. At the end of that phase, I was getting into more of these bad girl kind of adult themed books. And, we're talking about Lady Death and Witchblade and She and, all of those tough girl books, right? And one of the ones that I got into towards the end there was Cry for Dawn, and by extension, just the title Dawn by Joseph Michael Linsner. It's always held a special place in my heart for me. It's a little racy, it's definitely adult themed, adult oriented, but beautiful, beautiful artwork. I think that Joseph Michael Linsner might be one of my top 10 favorite comic book artists of all time. So it makes sense that I would put one of his covers, one of his most iconic covers, in my top 10. Number 9, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 1, the Eastman and Laird phenomenon that started like an intellectual property that has become worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. Is this cover the most technically advanced artwork? No, of course not. It's black and white with some red, and it's pretty basic, actually. It's not super technically sound. It's a little goofy, but man, it's fun. It started the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles revolution. The Turtles are, for me, probably my second favorite character or characters after Spider-Man. It means a lot to me, and yeah, I'm putting it in the top 10 because of how much I love the Turtles. And I love this cover. When I see it, I think wow, that started it all. That's amazing. And I must not be the only one, because that book sells for thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, depending on condition. It is extremely sought after. Even the reprints are honestly out of my price range at this point. A second and even a third printing costs upwards of $1,000 to $2,000 easily. And we're not even talking about high grade. So yeah, I must not be the only one that thinks this is an amazing cover, because lots of people love it and lots of people want it, and I don't blame them. So number 8 is another Batman title. And I said I tried to limit the number of times I do duplicate titles or duplicate artists. There are no duplicate artists. But Batman is going on the list again because the artist that I'm talking about is Neil Adams, and the book is Batman 251. I had to pick a Neil Adams book because, I mean, he's one of the greatest. And if you're going to pick a Neil Adams book, it's probably got to be a Batman cover because he's done so many prolifically amazing Batman covers that how could you not? 251 for me is my absolute favorite Neil Adams cover, and it's maybe my second favorite Batman cover. So yeah, it is on the list. Even though I'm breaking my rules and I'm doing another Batman, it is what it is. What can I say? It's my list and they're my rules, and rules are sometimes made to be broken. But Batman 251 is up here at number 8, I believe I said. And yeah, it's phenomenal. Number 7, Wolverine #1 miniseries by Frank Miller. Another one of these books that has a ton of sentimental value to me. I've owned it when I was a little kid collecting comics for the first time. I own it again. And if you stay tuned, a future monthly giveaway might include this book. Not this month, but yeah, down the road a ways. Stay tuned for that. Regardless, Wolverine #1, the miniseries, great story, first of all, great artwork throughout the book. But that #1 cover is so absolutely iconic that, I mean, you know, it's just one of the best Bronze Age books ever, or Copper Age, Bronze Age. Like, it's a little funny where we delineate when the ages change. But yeah, I believe it's a 1982 book, or is it 85? Either way, it's of that era, and it's one of the best books of that era. I absolutely love it. I love pulling it out of my collection every once in a while, looking at the cover, of course, thumbing through the book. It's phenomenal. Frank Miller had to be on this list, had to be high, and it had to be this book. Number 6, I went with a John Romita Sr. cover, and I bet you can guess at least where I'm going with this one, because I haven't had an Amazing Spider-Man on this list yet, and you know Amazing Spider-Man is my favorite character. So, which John Romita Sr. Amazing Spider-Man did I pick for number 6? Well, it's number 122, the amazing, you know, 2-part Death of Gwen Stacy series, or story arc, if you will. The cover is one that I actually, in facsimile form, display on my shelves with some McFarlane statues of Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. It's that much of like a classic for me that I want to see it all the time, every time I walk past that shelf. Colors on that are maybe the thing that really drew me into it. Everything on that just pops. And I mean, John Romita Sr.'s artwork in general always pops. There's something special about it, and that's why he's so high on my list. He's one of the best. He's right up there with, you know, the Silver Age classics like Kirby and Ditko and all of those guys. For me, anyway. Maybe not for you, but I think he's one of the greatest. So that's why Amazing Spider-Man 122 wound up at number 6 on my list. Number 5, maybe I could interchange with number 6. In thinking about this, I think maybe I could bump 6 up to 5 and move this down to 6, but regardless, they're so close that it doesn't matter. It's The Punisher #1 miniseries by Mike Zeck. That image of the Punisher, that, I guess it's an oil painting if I had to guess. I'm not an artist. I don't know art stuff, right? But like, such an amazing image. And it's another one that I remember seeing up on the wall. You know, it was a wall book even back in the late 80s and early 90s. Super, super iconic, amazing artwork. If you're going to be introduced to Punisher for the first time, there's probably just a handful of covers that you need to see to realize, like, oh, this character's cool. You know, that's one of them. There's some Tim Bradstreet covers that I really kind of like lamented on picking instead of this one because I wanted a Punisher cover. Punisher's maybe top 5, one of my top 5 favorite characters. So I had to get Punisher on this list. And yeah, there's a lot of great Tim Bradstreet covers too in that like 2000s era when he was doing all of those volume 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 8. I don't even remember. There's been so many reboots of the Punisher. But yeah, I had to go old school on this one. And I think that this Punisher #1 miniseries cover by Zeck probably best just encapsulates what the Punisher is. And I love it. I love it that I own it. I like to display it. I like to look at it. And yeah, it's way up there on my list. Number 4 is going to be super, I don't know, controversial maybe. I think people are going to debate me picking this one because it's really not the greatest cover of all time or top 4 greatest covers of all time anyway. But I love it because it's the first comic book I ever bought. And I still have a copy of it. Not the original copy but that I bought back in 88 or 89 or whenever that was when it came out. Maybe it was 90 now. But it's Lobo #1, the miniseries by Simon Beasley. And A, I love Simon Beasley. His artwork is phenomenal. And B, Lobo is an amazing character. And C, it was the first comic I ever bought. And I couldn't put it in my top 3 just on sentimental value, but I had to get it up there really, really high. It's for sure in my top 10. And if I boosted it up a little too high because of sentimental value, I apologize. I know you guys are going to debate me in the comments. But yeah, this cover it's phenomenal. I remember I was a sports card kid, right? I was going into the comic book shops, buying packs of sports cards, wax packs, tops, and Score and Upper Deck and whatnot, baseball, football, basketball. I liked all of it. And I was walking past the comic wall and I saw that Simon Beasley Lobo #1 cover up on the wall. And I was like, whoa, what is that? That's brutal. You know what I mean? Like the imagery grabs your attention. And I bought it, took it home, and immediately I went from being a sports card collector to a comic book collector, and I never looked back. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still like sports cards a little bit, but comic books just mean so much more to me. And this was the one that started it all. So I figured I might as well go big or go home, and I'm going big on this one because it does mean a lot to me. All right, so here we are. We're in my top 3. And, to hell with the rules at this point. I am going to do some duplicate stuff. I'm going to do duplicate titles at a minimum. Probably not artists. You'll see. But yeah, number 3 for me, Amazing Fantasy 15. I'm doing another Spider-Man because Spider-Man is my favorite character. And this is obviously my favorite Spider-Man cover, even though it's like an old Silver Age. I think it is the quintessential depiction of this character. Now, I always thought this cover was by Steve Ditko, but no, it's, I guess, apparently by Jack Kirby, but Steve Ditko did ink it, they say. I didn't know that for the longest time. So, hey, like I said, I don't obsess about like the creators. I obsess about the characters and the stories. So that was a little bit of a learning experience. Kirby, I don't think, did a lot of Spider-Man stuff, so that he did this cover is pretty interesting. And it stands the test of time. I mean, I have a giant 24x36 poster framed in my computer room of this cover. I think it's, that good. So yeah, top 3, Amazing Fantasy 15, without a doubt. While I'm never, ever going to own the original copy of this book, I do have a facsimile of it, and I do have a poster of it. I think it's amazing, and it absolutely belongs in my top 3. Number 2 and number 1 are my 2 favorite artists from the 90s era, where I grew up collecting comic books. At number 2, we have Jim Lee, and I had a really tough time picking which cover I wanted to use as my favorite Jim Lee cover, and my second favorite cover of all time. There's Batman 608 second printing, and that's easily Jim Lee's most iconic cover. I think some of you anyway, are going to disagree with me, and you're going to say it's the other cover I'm about to say. But for me, I mean, it's like his best cover. It's amazing. But because I already picked a Batman cover, I said, all right, we'll go with the other obvious super iconic Jim Lee cover, X-Men #1. And I could easily take either one of these as being his best cover of all time. The Panorama X-Men #1 is certainly more elaborate in terms of the amount of characters that are in it and the amount of stuff that's going on in it. But I think the Batman is a prettier cover. But I will say number 2 is X-Men #1 to try to stick to my rules of not using the same titles more than once if I can help it. And yeah, Jim Lee, I mean, he's an icon. He's been in this industry for, 30, 40, going on 40 years. He is still going strong, still doing covers at a minimum. I'm not sure if he's illustrating books anymore so much, but yeah, he deserves to be super high on my list, and he's number 2, which leaves number 1. Number 1 should be no surprise to you guys. I am a huge Todd McFarlane fan. And if you've been watching any of my videos, you would know that. I talk about Todd McFarlane in almost every video so far. My cover for the best comic book cover of all time and my favorite Todd McFarlane cover was really, really difficult to pick. I, of course, love all of his amazing Spider-Man work and his subsequent Spider-Man work. I think that there are so many phenomenal covers in that 40-ish issue run of Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man. Not to mention some other stuff like Batman 423, which I love. I have a statue that is depicting that cover. I think that's amazing. But that's not what I picked either. What I picked was Incredible Hulk number 340. And a lot of people think that this is his best cover of all time and one of the best covers of all time. So I don't feel bad about picking that cover. It was just so hard, and I'm so unsure about whether or not I made the right choice in picking that cover that I feel a little bit wishy-washy about it. But I think I made the right choice. I think Hulk number 340 is Todd's best cover, and I think it is, if not my most favorite cover, it is one of the best covers that's ever been done. All right, guys, that's going to wrap this one up for today. I really appreciate you tuning in and checking out my video. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, there's nothing scientific going on here. I'm not using any sort of metrics to build this list. It's not based off sales data or user or viewer polling or anything. These are just my opinions. What are my favorite covers of all time? That's my top 25. I hope you liked it. And yeah, that's it. That'll wrap this one up for today. So let me say thanks again for tuning in and watching. I really, really appreciate it. And do me a favor, keep collecting and, of course, keep watching. Subscribe to the channel. And until the next one, I'll say bye now.